On January 8th, 1990, I got aboard a plane to fly to Tokyo, kicking and screaming. I didn't want to fight. All I was interested in then was partying and fucking women. By the time we left, I had put on 30 pounds. Don King was so worried about my weight that he offered me a bonus if I could make my usual weight when we fought in a month. I didn't consider Buster Douglas much of a challenge. I didn't even bother watching any of his fights on video. I had easily beaten everybody who had knocked him out. I saw him fight for the ESPN championship when I was on the undercard and he got beat by Jesse Ferguson, who I had knocked out in my first fight on ABC. I felt like my heroes Mickey Walker and Harry Greb. I read that Greb was so arrogant that he'd tell his opponents that he hadn't trained because you are not worth me sweating for. So I followed his lead. I didn't train at all for the fight. Anthony Pitts was there with me, and he would get up early in the morning and run with my sparring partner, Greg Page. But I didn't feel like it. Anthony would tell me that he'd see Buster out there digging in with his army boots on, snot stickles hanging off his nose, getting in his run. I couldn't since I was overweight and I wanted to lose the weight and win the bonus from Don, so I drank the soup that was supposed to burn off fat. And then I had the cleaning ladies for the main course. It was ironic because you go to Japan and the women seem so shy and introverted, but fortunately I ran into some unconventional Japanese ladies. People would ask me if I learned any sexual tips from the Japanese women, but I didn't have any time to learn. This was no sex education course. This was a guy trying to get his rocks off. I didn't even have to pay the maids to screw them, but I did tip them heavily because a lot of that monopoly-looking money that they had over there, they must have been appreciative because they'd come back and sometimes bring friends. My friend would love to meet you, Mr. Tyson, sir. She would like to accompany us, sir. Besides having sex with the names, I was seeing this young Japanese girl who I had sex with the first time I was in Japan for the Tony Tubbs fight. Robin would go out shopping, and I would go upstairs to the stairwell with her. I had to do the same thing this time. There were too many people on my floor, and I didn't want Don or Rory or John or Anthony to know my business. They might have scared her. She was very shy around people. In the 2 years since I had seen her, she had matured a great deal. So that was my training for Douglas. Every once in a while, I did show up to work out and spar. I was sparring with Greg Page 10 days before the fight, and I walked into a right hook and went down. "What the fuck are you doing?" Greg asked me later. A few days later, Don opened up one of my sparring sessions to the public for $60 a head. I never saw any of that money, of course. At the time, I didn't even know he was charging people. We were supposed to spar for 2 rounds, but I looked so bad that Aaron Snowell and Jay stopped it after 1 and closed the session. Don was pissed off. He wanted to make a buck. He had no idea I was so out of shape. Don knew nothing about fighting. He couldn't tell the difference between a guy in shape or out of shape. He didn't even know how to tie a boxing glove. The day before the fight, I weighed in at 220.5 pounds, my heaviest fighting weight to date, but I still got my bonus. The day before the fight, I also had 2 mains at the same time, and then 2 more girls, one at a time, the night before the fight. I wasn't following the story, but apparently Douglas had a lot of motivation to do well in this fight. In July of 1989, he had been born again, and then his wife left him. His baby mama got a terminal disease, and early in January, while he was in camp, his mother died. I didn't know any of that, and I didn't care. HBO was making a big deal about Douglas fighting for his mother, but my arrogance at the time was such that I would have said that he was going to join her that night. We fought at 9 a.m. because of the time difference back in the United States. Half of the arena's 63,000 seats were empty. Don was a lousy promoter. As soon as I got with him, everything just sunk. He was a dark cloud. It wasn't the usual Tyson going into the ring. It was obvious to anyone who was watching that I really didn't want to be there. The fight started, and I fought horribly. I was punching as hard as shit because I knew if I caught him right, he wasn't going to get up. I didn't care how big he was. But I was hardly throwing. It was the least amount of punches I'd ever thrown in a fight. He used his jab and his reach to throw me off my game, And then when I tried to throw body shots, he just held me. He fought very well that night, but I was an easy target for him. I wasn't moving my head at all. He wasn't intimidated by me. In fact, he was the one punching after the bell and on breaks. He was fighting dirty, but that's just part of boxing. Everyone did that. After the third round, I went back to my corner, and it was obvious that Ed and Jay were in over their heads. "You're not closing the gap," Aaron said. "You've got to get inside. You're flat-footed in there." "No fucking shit. Why don't you try to get inside?" The guy had a 12-inch reach advantage on me. "Get back to what you know," Jay said. "Do it. Let it go." Easy to say that when you're not getting punched. I kept staring at the floor. Douglas rocked me in the fourth and the fifth. During the fifth round, my eye began to swell, but when I went back to the corner, didn't even have the inspo to keep my eye open. I couldn't believe when they filled what looks like an extra large condom with ice water and held it to my eye. I was exhausted by the sixth round. My left eye was totally shut. But Buster tired too, especially when the seventh round began. But I couldn't get to him. In the eighth, he wobbled me and had me just the ropes in the last 20 seconds. I was looking for one punch by then. I was still rocked by his punches. I couldn't focus, but I saw an opening. For the whole fight, he had eluded me whenever I saw openings and couldn't bridge the gap. But by then, he was too tired and he couldn't move. So I threw my right uppercut, and down he went. Then I got screwed. The timekeeper was Japanese and the referee was Mexican. They spoke different languages and couldn't coordinate the count. When the ref was saying 5, Douglas had actually been on the canvas for 8 seconds. So he got a long count. I had to take the short end of the stick. That's just part of boxing, but I think I was really screwed. The WBA was supposed to be on our side. I knew it was good to win because the guys I fought were fighting me and the officials too, basically. Dolan always paid off the officials. At least that's what he told me. Maybe he forgot to pay off the ref that night. Well, I don't want to take anything away from Buster. He had so much courage and guts that night. I had hit him with an awesome shot. Anyone else's head would have been sent to the space shuttle if they had experienced that punch. I was so spent that I couldn't follow up on a knockdown the next round. He came back strong. When the 10th began, I hit him with a straight right to the jaw, but then he unleashed a barrage of punches at my head, starting with a right uppercut. I was so numb that I didn't even feel the punches, but I could hear them. My equilibrium was shot. Then I went down. When I hit the canvas, a mouthpiece came out, and as the ref was counting, I was trying to stumble to my feet and grab the mouthpiece at the same time. I was operating on pure instinct. I was totally out of it. The ref hugged me after he counted to 10. I walked back to my corner totally dazed. I was chewing on my mouthpiece, but I didn't even know what it was. "What happened?" I asked my corner. "The ref counted you out, champ," Aaron said. I knew it was inevitable. I was fucked from early on in that fight. I didn't do the post-fight interview with HBO. My head was still ringing. I must have at least had one concussion. Within minutes, Don had organized a meeting with the WBC and WBA officials. Then he called his own press conference. "The first knockout obliterated the second knockout," he ranted. The president of WBC suspended recognition of anyone as champion because the ref had failed to take the count from the timekeeper. The referee admitted that he had made a mistake. They immediately called for a rematch. By then, I was conscious enough to join the press conference. I was wearing sunglasses to hide my mangled eye and holding a wet compress to my swollen face. "You guys know me for years. I never grabbed her bitch. I knocked him out before he had knocked me out. I want to be the champ of the world. That's what all young boys want," I said. I went back to my hotel room. There was no maid there. It was weird not being the heavyweight champion of the world any longer. But in my mind, it was a fluke. I knew that God didn't pick on any small animals, that lightning only struck the biggest animals, that those are the only ones that vex God. Minor animals don't get God upset. God has to keep the big animals in check so that they don't get lost beyond their thrones. I just lay in my bed that night and thought that I had become so big that God was jealous of me.